it feels like we're going into spring, but then get hit with kind of a Chicago type windy, snow, rain yesterday, but then we see 60s in the forecast moving forward. So we're making our way towards spring in Fort Collins. But, you know, as we know, my daughter actually asked me if we could plant one of her radishes that she got from our school. And I said, no, we can't plant it because, you know, there's a potential that it's going to freeze. She goes, no, it's sunny out. I said, that's true. But Mother's Day always is kind of the rule of thumb here in Northern Colorado for us to wait after that to start planting. I don't know if she fully understood that, but an example today, you know, we got down to the 20s and it was pretty darn cold, icy. It was pretty slippery on our way into work this morning. So hopefully everyone got into work. We did see a couple of crashes along College Avenue. So hopefully everyone was safe and is okay. But moving forward, some bright sunny days here in the near future. But this is Live in Fort Collins, coming to you every Monday at noon, probably between 30 to 45 minutes long. We're allowing some extra time because, well, there just seemed to be some good information that I didn't want to necessarily rush through. And in fact, over this past week, there was actually 3 different meetings that we watched. We watched a special meeting with City Council. We watched the regular meeting, regular City Council meeting, and then also a planning and zoning meeting. And those are things that I want to talk to you guys about today, as well as some different things that happened over the last week. So without any delay, now, we're also allowing for some additional time so people can get on, ask questions, engage. If you have questions, leave them in the comments and I will try to address them as we are live. This is a great opportunity to ask and learn, or maybe have your question answered in real time if I know it. So jumping in, you know, the first thing was a special meeting with City Council. There was 100 people who came in and talked, and there was just some big things that happened. There was a City Council meeting not too long ago where there was some kind of protesters of sorts that didn't allow the council meeting to take place. And Jenny Arndt was quick to call it to an end, and in fact then called a recess for that meeting. And what was unfortunate about that was there's a lot of people whose voices didn't get to be heard. And so I think they kind of had this like snap reaction of, okay, let's limit public comment to maybe the end of meetings, limit to an hour at the beginning, only allow people to talk about things that are on the agenda, and then allow City Council to move locations if in fact there does become some sort of disturbance with remote public participation. And the city of Fort Collins citizens did not like that. In fact, all of the council members, I think after had some time to think about it, they didn't like it and essentially voted down everything as far as potential changes, except for the ability to remote, go into a different location if it is being disturbed and allow remote participation, but to continue the meeting as needed. You know, there's some things that I think, I mean, after watching City Council meetings for so long, I definitely think that there should be some sort of limitation to public comment, and then finish it on the backside, because there are some really big, important decisions being made by City Council that they're being made after having listened to 3.5 hours of public comment, and sometimes not necessarily about that agenda item. And there's important things that they're having to decide. So I don't know if I necessarily agree without necessarily limiting public comments or to the agenda items, but long story short, City Council decided to move basically all of those away and only accept the ability to do remote meetings and move locations if needed. It was super interesting. You know, I will say one of these reasons I started making these lives was to get more informed about Northern Colorado City Council, planning and zoning, just really pay attention to what's going on in the news. And then there's this article that comes out, Chimney Hollow Park and Chimney Hollow Reservoir, that I'm like, I don't even know what this is. And in fact, it's a 90,000 acre foot reservoir with a 300 some odd foot tall dam just west of Carter Lake. And it's in Northern Colorado, Larimer County, that will ultimately be a kind of open space and natural area for Larimer County residents to enjoy hiking, non-motorized boats, horseback riding, and it's just west of Carter Lake. And I mean, talk about just recreational opportunities in our backyard continually to grow. And actually, I'm going to talk about one here in the near future as well on this live. But some of the data on this is just nuts. Now, it is interesting that all this water that's being accumulated that will serve 30,000 acre feet per year once it's filled up, it'll take about 3 years for it to be filled up, should open in 2025, the reservoir, but then take 3 years to fill up. But it was talking about how much earth they're having to move, and essentially like moving, tens of thousands of tons every day, 24 hours a day for the next 2.5 years, or it was for the past 2.5 years. And it was just nuts to hear that it's going to take that much to be done. And by the time it's all said and done, it'll be a $750 million project. And to put that in perspective, Glade Reservoir that is projected to be built north off of US 287 is expected to be $2 billion. And a big portion of that is because they're having to move that water everywhere. But that's going to be 170,000 acre feet, so nearly double the size of Chimney Hollow Reservoir. Now, it will be one of the biggest reservoirs, but the top 5 reservoirs, I thought this would be interesting. Glade Reservoir, which is proposed and essentially going to be done. But Chimney Hollow was essentially discussed in 2000, and it's just going to come live at the end of 2025. And it's just like 25 years to build a reservoir. Just wild. So Glade Reservoir, which had been discussed over the last basically 5 to 10 years, I'm guessing is going to be another 10 to 15 years out before it comes online. Don't have any data to back that up, but I'm just basing it off of this original discussion in 2000 and then coming online in 2025. But the 5 biggest reservoirs, if Glade gets built, will be Glade Reservoir, 170,000, Horseshoe Reservoir, 156,000 acre feet, Carter Lake, which will be right to the east of Chimney Hollow, is 112,000 acre feet, Boyd Lake, which is 110,000 acre feet, and then Chimney Hollow. Those are all pretty big reservoirs, which is pretty awesome that we have that in our backyard. All of those are recreation areas for Fort Collins. Again, a lot of people move here and enjoy living in northern Colorado and Larimer County because of the ability for those recreation opportunities. Speaking of which, in 2022, the Larimer County bought Heaven's Door Ranch, about 1,500 acre ranch, and is going to keep it as open space and is a strategic portion of their conservation strategy. And it's going to be basically up US 34 at the mouth of Thompson River, which they're going to have guided tours this year, but will be open to the public probably by 2030, fully open with shelters, walking paths, all that kind of stuff. But again, 1,500 acres right outside Loveland. I mean, just again, all of these things that are happening to really focus on what the character is of Fort Collins, Northern Colorado, Loveland, Longmont. I mean, up and down the Front Range, this intentionality behind natural areas and preservation. Now, flipping the script a little bit, there was a little bit of an article that said, Bed Bath & Beyond is going to go into the Front Range Village. I don't necessarily care about that too much, but I do want to talk about kind of that Front Range Village in general has really transformed that southeast side of Fort Collins. I mean, Nike is there, DSW Shoes, Dasbog, Target, Urban Air. We were just there on Friday for our kids' friend's birthday party. That Front Range Village shopping center really is turned into something pretty special to the southeast side of Fort Collins. And those neighbors to the north, English Ranch, we've got Union Park that's being built there, Woodland Parks, Stone Ridge, those neighborhoods really didn't have much commercial near it. And now they've got just a great shopping center there. We're going to talk about Strauss Lake's Metro District that was approved tentatively, but we're going to talk about, this huge development that's going to be happening on Horsetooth and Ziegler here in the near future. So Southeast Fort Collins is bumping. One of the big changes that are being discussed, and really it's probably one of the big changes that has happened in my lifetime, is kind of this redrawing of boundaries or consolidation of schools, but the decline in enrollment in public education. And a number that was relatively, staggering was this year, we have 2,200 graduating seniors versus only 1,600 kindergartners. And there's lots of different reasons for that. Homeschooling, charter schools, different types of school systems versus the public school system. And we have, a fair amount of assets that the Poudre School District has and a $400 million annual budget that is going to be impacted nearly $8 million a year by the declining enrollment in Poudre School District. And so they have to make these tough decisions about how do we maximize our budget and allow for kids to have quality education and allow that to be within these kind of neighborhood schools and middle schools, high schools, and see how we can kind of offload some maybe more burdened areas that have a higher population of young kiddos and move those to maybe a little bit, increase the size of those boundaries, which could be tough. So I think there's a lot of different dates. So if you have a kid in Poudre School District, or are you interested in having, being able to go to some listening sessions, March 25th, March 27th, March 28th, and April 4th. Now, there is going to be kind of a preliminary vote, I believe on June 4th, and then a final recommended plan that is going to be voted on June 11th. And I believe this will then take place. I'm not sure when the actual changes will take place. Implemented 24 to 25 school years. So not this year. This is 23 to 24. So actually next year, these could be implemented, which is crazy because my kiddos in kindergarten, I don't necessarily see where we are at is going to necessarily be impacted too much. But, Northwest Fort Collins, Olander, that's kind of southwest, but West Fort Collins, Olander, Blevins, Bowder, Beatty, east of I-25, Bamford, Bethkey, Timnath Middle High, and then kind of in the middle of town as well could see some changes. So definitely something that we're watching. North of town, Cache La Poudre, potentially being like completely removed if you're on the north side of town, and some consolidation as well with some of these kind of special learning programs like Polaris and Centennial High School. So paying attention to that, listening to seeing what's going to happen, and we'll kind of report back on that on a weekly basis as information kind of reveals itself. I joked a little bit about with, my team and on Instagram that Krispy Kreme has broken ground. It is set to open in November of this year. I just went to Lamar's Donuts on Friday by myself after a client meeting and had a couple donuts, and it is my weakness. It is a scary thing because I drive by that location, which used to be Fazoli's, every single day, and they will be baking donuts there on a daily basis. So great news. So something that is happening. Now, we're going to talk about this here soon, but on the Planning and Zoning Board, Commission, they were discussing the foundational land use code, basically take 3 on the land use code, which was essentially a nothing burger more than anything. But from what I can kind of, garner from having conversations with YIMBY and different, public members of the government in Fort Collins and different areas working for the city, it sounds like they're allowing the state to make some of these big changes within the zoning and land use code and what you can do within your city, which is kind of concerning to us a little extent. I definitely like the idea of Fort Collins maintaining its kind of autonomy and being able to decide for itself rather than having kind of big brother tell you what to do. But the U+2 rule is through the House and now the Senate, but the Senate had some alterations and kind of pushing it back to the House. But if passed, it could very well do away with the U+2 rule in Fort Collins, which essentially is limiting people to having 2 unrelated people plus 1. So 3 unrelated people in 1 dwelling unit is what the current law is in Fort Collins. And if you're not doing that, you're technically breaking the law and could get, fines, and they're pretty substantial fines too. But there's some estimations of like 1,500 bedroom or 15,000 bedrooms in Fort Collins that are unused because of the U+2 rule. And in Boulder, they actually did away with their rulings earlier last year because they were just saying, hey, people are already breaking these laws. Well, let's just bring them in compliance. But this is at the state level, essentially saying, yes, there's going to be some limitations, whether it's bedroom count or health or codes, things of that nature, that they are going to have some restrictions, but it's not going to be based off of familial status, which would then, upend kind of what Fort Collins is doing, because Fort Collins is actually talking about occupancy limits in March. I believe actually, maybe this year, this month. And it's something that's important to the city, Fort Collins. I mean, it's been around for, decades. And there's concerns on both sides of saying, hey, these kind of family or residential neighborhoods could be upended with cars and trash and rubbish and nuisances. And then others are saying, hey, the affordability, it could be, instead of having 3 people in this 4-bedroom house, you could have 4, and they could spread the cost burden. And I will say there are landlords out there that will, keep the rents the same as far as, let's just, for instance, a 4-bedroom house that's $2,000 a month. Maybe that landlord keeps it at $2,000 a month, but only has 3 people living there. But what I've seen in my history of investment real estate is they see it as a per bedroom charge, that the market states that individual could charge $800 to, let's just call it $1,000 per bedroom. And instead of being able to have 3 people there, they can now have 4 people there, so they can up the rents. So it will be interesting to see how this all plays out, and if it does soften rents any. But regardless, it is through the state's House and Senate back to the House to approve these changes that the Senate requested, but then would be automatically implemented, and Fort Collins would be required to follow those rules. So you could see in Fort Collins the U+2 rule go away sooner than later. All right, jumping into kind of the city council. Again, we had the special meeting. We already talked about that a little bit. And then we had the regular meeting, which the regular meeting was 1,031 pages. Now, a lot of these were volunteer applications, so it wasn't really that big of a agenda. But I think one of the best things that was on there that city council talked about was that the Harmony underpass has been funded, which means they will begin construction on the Harmony underpass, I believe this year, spring of 2025, they will begin construction. And I want to share what this looks like. So stick with me. I am going to share this. This is where the Harmony underpass will go. So here is McMurray right here. This is where it currently, like bikers, we would go. This is the power trail. So we would come along the power trail, and then we jump onto Keeneland Drive and then go up to McMurray and then come across Harmony Road. Now, I never took my kids on this bike ride because I didn't, no way am I going to have them cross Harmony Road. But there is a substantial amount of, car traffic there, and they've got the green dotted lines. But if this, and it sounds like will take place, this proposed power trail extension will go under Harmony Road, connect directly. So you would used to actually go through Cruise right here, which was actually kind of a cute little ride, but you would go straight here, and the power trail would then connect all the way north to south without having to cross any busy roads, and just really be pretty special. So that funding has passed, and construction will begin in spring of 2025. And I want to show you guys over here too. This is the overpass that goes by Bacon Elementary. This is Hanson Farms. So this is, and then Willow Springs right here. So, we've got DR Horton that's building a community right here. We've got Dreamfinders right here, and then Willow Springs that's existing. But there will be an overpass connecting the power trail. Now, my aunt lives down here in Linden Park. And so there's always, we'd honestly ride through it. And I don't think you're supposed to like cross over the railroad tracks, but so many people did. But this will make it safer and more accessible. So the power trail will see some, definitely exciting changes here in the near future. You can hear my kids crying. I think he's not happy that he has to go to school here soon. But the main point of that city council meeting was to look at the Metro District at Strauss Lake properties. Now, we have some of the most restrictive rules that for metro districts in Fort Collins, and there's not many of them. Currently, the current ones being built are Northfield, Landmark, and Dreamfinders are out there building, and then Bloom, which is developed by and developing by Hartford Homes. But then there'll be multiple builders out there. But those are the two metro districts currently in works, and this would be the third. And there has to be an extraordinary public benefit for the city council to approve and planning to approve these metro districts. Because obviously, this one's suggesting it's going to be a $93 million bond that will be paid off over 30 years by way of a metro tax on people living there. Now, Strauss Lakes looks like it's going to be pretty huge. There's 94 live-work lots. Let's see here. Large townhomes, single-family, small townhomes, commercial, mixed use. And this could all happen here in the near future. But I want to show you guys kind of what this development looks like. Let's see if I can get it to be a little bit better than to show everything on my screen. Here we go. You guys can hear the kiddos. Sorry about that. He's not very happy right now. But Strauss Lakes, so this is Ziegler right here, William Neal Parkway, Horsetooth Road, and then we've got, basically little reservoirs here. This was all like concrete, asphalt, Connell out here, and now it's going to be pretty huge as far as a housing development, mixed use, 4 different parks, but will be operated by way of a metro district. This is also the Poudre Trail over here. And I was just talking with somebody who lives in Rigdon Farm on this side of Ziegler, and they're actually really excited. There would be a street light here at William Neal Parkway, because currently to get over to the Poudre Trail, there's no real stoplight, and people can be flying around Ziegler. I do think it's a little bit of a hack driving wise to get downtown very quickly, but I could see from a safety point of view, having this development here, the streetlight connection, and the ability to get to Poudre Trail safely would be pretty special. But that was the main conversation piece for City Council, was to discuss the Metro District. Apparently, they weren't super enthused about it. They wanted to make sure things are done properly, and an extraordinary benefit, which is kind of interesting language. But man, I would say, again, Fort Collins does a lot of things very well. And I would say our cost of housing isn't being helped by the length of the process that these developments have to take, which then kind of leads me into the planning and zoning meeting that happened, that there was 2 items discussed. This Willix Farms, which had an original 74 units proposed. And this is off Willix College, between College and Shields. And they had to go all the way down to 62 to try to abide by these net dwelling units per acre, which can't really wasn't supposed to exceed 2 in this urban estate, but then they got kind of a variance, or asked for a variance to get to 4, so quarter acre lots. And these include, and they'll be smaller than quarter acre, because these actually include sidewalks, streets, all that good stuff. But this plan started in 2021, and they're hoping to get final approval here soon. But I mean, just talk about jumping through hoops. They went from 74 proposed units to 62 proposed units. The return on investment for the developer, I'm sure, is less and less, because they're not being able to sell more homes. But ultimately got approval to move forward, and will continue to work before final to have communication with neighbors and really try to accommodate some of these requirements for what's called a cluster development on Willix Farms. Now, I had talked to one of the commissioners prior to this meeting, the day of the meeting, and he was expecting it to be relatively intense, because the foundational land use code was being proposed. And there were basically 9 changes. Essentially, doing away with anything on urban estate and residential development. So not allowing any ADUs or duplexes, not allowing subdivision of properties, and allowing HOAs to kind of overrule and rule kind of their developments. And there was nobody there, no public comment for this. It only actually lasted an hour for them to talk about things, but the Planning and Zoning Commission pushed back and said, hey, City Council, maybe we allow internal ADUs or decrease the lot size to allow for ADUs in the NCM district from 10,000 feet to 9,500 feet. Now, these are just recommendations, and City Council is ultimately going to have to vote on this. But this gets back to where we were originally talking about with the state, where they want to implement some of these housing strategies, do away with U+2, allow for ADUs to be built in any zone, specific cities and neighborhoods and all that kind of, or cities and city sizes, which Fort Collins would be one of those. And so they're trying to kind of, City Council, from my perspective, is trying to push off the burden and at least pass the land use code changes so that phase 2, which is more on the commercial side, can kind of get going. So it seems like they just watered it down substantially. And the commission wasn't super happy because they were like, hey, you know what? We want to see these changes to allow for multi-generational living, internal ADUs. But regardless, they said, hey, we're going to make these recommendations, but sure, the foundational land use code can move on to City Council for first reading. And we'll see where Preserve Fort Collins comes in and what YIMBY says about this plan, because there's a contingent of about 4,000 to 5,000 people in Fort Collins with Preserve Fort Collins who have been pushing hard against any changes. And are they fighting change because of change's sake, or were they fighting change because of things that were actually within the plan? I think originally that was the case, but I feel like now it's just like, I don't know if the right word is vitriol, but it just seems like, hey, they are going to fight it even if there's nothing in this plan. So the foundational land use code, I'll be interested to see all of the updates that will go on, but it is from the original land development code change to land use code change 2.0 to the foundational land use code. I mean, we were talking huge changes to no changes. So that was kind of it in a nutshell. That is kind of it as far as the live for today. If you guys have any questions, some things to do today, there's a blood drive, Columbine Health Systems blood drive at 802 West Drake Road, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So if you've got, and I've got time. Also, there is a Parks and Rec hiring fair, March 30th, 10 to 12 p.m. at Epic Edora Pool and Ice Center. So if you're looking at working for Parks and Rec this summer, looking for a summertime job, part-time, that is an opportunity. There's a hiring fair going on there, March 30th. And then Fort Collins Tours, which used to be Fort Collins Ghost Tours, but now it's just Fort Collins Tours. Every Saturday between 2 to 4 p.m., they have an Old Town Brewery and Distillery tour, and it's $24 per person. But definitely something that if you're looking for something to do on Saturday, might be worth checking out. They used to do, and they still do, I believe, the ghost tours through Old Town Fort Collins. So always something fun to do. But high level, Chimney Hollow Park, Heaven's Door Ranch, big changes happening in Fort Collins, Larimer County, Poudre School District boundaries, schools, elementaries, middle schools. If you ever have any questions, if you're watching this on rerun, definitely leave them in the comment section. I will get to you, unless they're extremely negative. I just don't respond to negative comments. Partially negative, I like to have fun with it. Positive, always. Even if it's just a question, like you can have an opposing point of view, and so long as it's phrased in a positive way, I'll absolutely respond to that. I think it's the ones that are just negative at the heart of it to be negative, I just ignore. And anything else I get to. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments, spin it in a positive light, and I will absolutely respond to it. But otherwise, I appreciate you guys joining me every Monday. And until next time, take care.